Hello!
Hi! Hello!
This is all podcast thingy for class. So we read Boys in Poverty, and it was quite good. I'm Matt Spangler.
I'm Abby Simmons.
And I'm Rachel Cox.
And we're here to talk about the book and figure out how we can apply it to each other as teachers and just what we thought of it. And we're also going to discuss Boys in Poverty as a whole and hopefully learn something to help us better understand our profession. Okay, Abby, you want to go first? What did you think of the book?
Boys in Poverty was very good at giving practical advice, not only just giving statistics about, boys in poverty and facts about what they go through, different types of boys in poverty. It gave really practical advice on how to connect with them, how to validate them, and how to respond to their needs. So I liked how it was very practical in its advice.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Rachel?
I thought it laid out pretty good tips to help us as teachers in and out of the classroom. I'm going to be a health and wellness teacher, so it'll help me kind of understand them like in a gym setting or in, a setting of teaching them things in health and like having to sit in a classroom and how to engage them and allow them to kind of pay more attention. And so I think overall it was awesome for me to like understand them more as a whole, since I am a female, so we think a little differently. But I think it'll allow me to have some more tips in my tool belt for class and to be a better educator.
Matthew, what did you think of the book?
See, I enjoyed it quite a bit because as an English teacher, this is something that boys always struggle with, reading in general.
True.
And so just kind of seeing why the reason they don't like that kind of thing helped me really to kind of think about how I'm going to teach it in the future. It helped me kind of think of how I'm going to structure my classroom. So her listing all that, and plus reading the anecdote from the boys and just seeing all the stuff that they went through. And that idea of, I heard this from the interview from her, that if you can just say the one thing, if you could just be that one person that encourages them, that makes all the difference.
Right.
That kind of helped me rethink how I'm going to structure my classroom, even past my behavioral management plan that we did.
Yeah.
So we're going to answer a few questions about what we learned from the book and also what we learned from our article research. So one of our first questions kind of has two parts, is what are the statistics and the facts about boys in poverty? And what do teachers need to be aware of? And so we're going to let Rachel answer first.
So a few things that I found in the book first were that more often that 1/3 of all dropouts for boys occur in the 9th grade. And 75% of the state prison inmates do not complete high school. A male high school graduate with a D average is 14 times more likely to become incarcerated than a graduate with an A average, which I kind of found that statistic a little, higher than I thought it would be. I thought it might be a little bit lower, but anyways, 1 in 6 of most children that you'll have are poor, are considered to be poor in the school system. And then kind of a statistic I found in my Teaching Children from Poverty and Trauma article is that over 51% of the students in public schools today are from low socioeconomic backgrounds, which that one is a little high, I think. But I don't know kind of what you guys found, and if, you guys found any statistics that may kind of correlate. So what do you guys think?
I thought it was interesting just how many red flag behaviors there were that teachers don't often consider. Boys in Poverty mentioned a few. I'll just kind of go over them. Truancy, patterns of tardiness, acting out, withdrawn behaviors. And one that I thought was interesting was talk of drugs, sex, or non-age appropriate things. Most people don't really consider that to be a warning sign of poverty or a bad home life, but the book kind of explained how that kind of reflects that they're not in a good home background, and it's just common in those more poverty neighborhoods. Also, delays in common adaptive behavior, lower than expected academic performance, and then emotional things like anxiety, fear, or flinching lethargy, sleeping in school, hunger, all sorts of things, unusual eating patterns, and yeah, there's just a long list of red flag behaviors.
That's funny that you say that. I have a similar list, but I have all of those and a few others, such as students like at home try to become invisible, or they're chronically absent. But this one was the one that I found the most surprising. Wearing long sleeves in hot months to cover things such as bruises. I read in this article that a lot of students will be absent because they want their bruises to heal prior to them coming back to school. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Did y'all find anything that differentiates poverty from abuse? Because a lot of the things you're talking about, some of they correlate with abuse also, and poverty doesn't necessarily go towards abuse.
A lot of the research that I found in the articles put them kind of together, and then they would separate them. A lot of it comes from abuse, I would say. I think that because of the poverty that they live in, the abuse is a side effect, because you have a father that stays home and may be drunk and abuse the child because the child's home or not at school like they're supposed to be. Or you have a mom or a son that stands up for a mom because the father abuses the mom. Things like that. Those are the things that I read and were the causes of some of the abuse that kind of went with the poverty because of the low income. But I understand what you're saying and your point.
It's interesting you brought up the mother and father, because I found statistics on the ncs.ed.gov that talked about how the family status, like the structure of it, can affect poverty greatly. It shows that in total that 10% of married families are in poverty, but 43% of single mother households are in poverty, and even 27% of single fathers households are in poverty. So I think having that family structure can also be a thing that helps poverty not be as prevalent. And also, in all these statistics from every single race, the one where it's the father is absent, that creates more poverty. And that also goes into where we're talking about how boys behave in class, because without that father structure, that they'll be more likely to act out.
Right. They don't have that mentor that they need in their life, or that positive role model. I found in Poverty and Education, a critical analysis of Ruby Payne phenomenon is that role models are one of the most important influences, but the question is to the extent of which that role model is nurturing and appropriate to the student. I don't think people understand the power of influence that people have, and that influence comes from us as teachers. So one day we'll be that influence.
Yeah, I think that is something that teachers need to be more aware of. Something also interesting that the book was saying was how boys have mood swings daily rather than monthly, as girls do. And so they'll be really excited and hyper one moment and then feeling depressed a couple hours later, rather than girls whose mood swings are more monthly. And it also discussed how boys need thinking time to process emotional things, and that they're more wired for doing as opposed to talking. And so if you want a boy to talk to you or open up, it's best to maybe just hand them a puzzle or a Rubik's Cube, so they're doing something with their hands, is what I was saying, or going on a walk. Because they're more wired for action and activity. Oh, and also it mentioned how boys crave competition in school. And so I thought as teachers it would be cool to implement competition and those things more in the classroom, whether it's boys versus girls or a reward for doing a project. I think boys kind of crave that, especially as they're growing and maturing physically.
And I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but in the interview, in her interview with the author, it talked about how schools aren't crafted for boys nowadays, because they punish too much competitiveness. They punish acting out, and boys are very hardwired to move and to just want to do things and to challenge. And so they'll challenge their teachers or their authority to get that sense of competition within them, because we don't pursue it enough.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of one of the things that I read recently was that the teachers, instead of like putting the student in like timeout or putting them like outside the classroom, it's better to put them like in a corner by themselves or at like a table where they can like take a brain break, and it would allow them to kind of see what they've done wrong, but not totally eliminate them from the students in the classroom. It will help with the correction of the development of the problem. So, because a lot of the time disciplinary action at home is the biggest problem. I have a quote that says disciplinary action is seen as being about penance and forgiveness rather than really changing negative behaviors. Men value hard labor and identify as a lover and a fighter with bars and work as their main social outlet. Women learn that sex will bring in money and favors. Values are important, but they don't put food on the table. And so, like, if parents aren't correcting the students' problems early on, then they're going to continue to do those negative habits that they have developed.
And we got to start wrapping this up. I just have a question for y'all. As teachers, what do y'all think it would be what strategies would you like to use in order to help boys in your classroom specifically?
True. I think the most important thing teachers can do is not settle for mediocrity, because poverty is often a generational thing. So I think teachers don't need to accept their excuses or why they can't learn, but they need to challenge them to believe in themselves and succeed. And that comes by, having a positive atmosphere in your classroom, and really connecting with students personally. Learn their names as quick as possible, and make connections, knowing their background, and meet with their parents so you get a feel of their home life, and different practical things like that. I think are really crucial into making them able to grow.
For sure. I agree with all of that, and I have like some strategies that I found. Building positive, enriching relationships, creating a safe atmosphere for learning, gives students a sense of control, just like Dr. Price said, allowing us to make the rules of the class. Use a calm voice to teaching emotional skills. Work with the students who act out, working with withdrawn students, building short-term working memory, expressive writing skills, teaching reading skills, building students' vocab, teach self-regulation, empathy, meaningful touch, and then teaching hope, because students don't know, what that is anymore. They just see what's in front of them, and they don't see the hope for the future and what can, that they have the choice to get out of that poverty situation. So
that pretty much goes with how I want to teach, but especially the hope thing, because I really like grit, the idea of grit, and like you can dig yourself out of any situation, no matter what. You just have to work harder sometimes to do it.
Yeah.
And this goes with what boys, something they really need in school, and that's a goal. Yes. We have to figure out how as teachers to give them a goal. Maybe not for our health and wellness class, for our history class, or even an English class. We just have to figure out what drives them and encourage them in that, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And we find a way to relate that to them in their schoolwork. And I think that's probably the best thing we can do for them, is just give them something that keeps them going. Like, even if we can't give the material to them exactly, like they get a C in our class or even a D, if we can give them that goal, they're already more likely to not drop out of high school and not to stop doing what they want to do. We just have to give them that one little thing.
Totally agree.
All right. On that note, we thank you so much for listening about our discussion about boys in poverty and how to teach them effectively. Thank you for tuning in.
Adios.
Peace.